Hi there, my name is Eric, and this is a presentation on photography for birders and other wildlife enthusiasts, Chapter 5, Photographing Other Types of Wildlife. I'm going to be spending most of my time talking about reptiles and a little bit of time about amphibians. For the rest of the presentation, I'm going to defer you to my video on photographing creatures in captivity. And I'm also going to defer you to my video series macro photography. I haven't actually started that yet, but I will do it eventually. So this is a presentation on reptiles and amphibians. Reptiles are cold-blooded organisms. They are highly regulated by the temperature around them and the presence of the sun. Mornings are a great time to search for them because they are trying to warm up and get active. Basically, whatever you do for photographing birds is not too different from photographing reptiles and amphibians, but there are some significant differences. First of all, their habitat tends to be much more specific. You find birds kind of wherever you go, but not always reptiles and amphibians. There's a little in the way of migration, of course, although there is still some migration. There are some snakes that migrate quite a considerable distance. It's always good to be aware of risks regarding snakes and some poisonous lizards, and even things like some frogs are poisonous. Nothing in North America, but certainly South America has some winners. You can use some attractants, but it's a much more difficult setup. It's not something outside of my area of expertise. So I'm going to start talking about snakes here, and a little warning of caution. I do have some images that if you're not a snake lover, you might be disturbed at. Snakes smell with their tongues. Very interesting, actually. They dart their tongue out and it flickers up and down. Lizards do the same thing. And what they do is that they insert the tips of their tongue inside two tiny little organs in the roof of their mouth, the Jacobson organ. And that helps them detect prey. They have very good sense of smell, actually. This is a speckled king snake that I caught down in Galveston. I was quite thrilled at this find. I actually ended up catching 3 of them. Snakes tend to move away from you, so getting a photograph of them, butt in closest to you is usually not very good. Sometimes, and if you move slowly, you can get photographs of them with their head. Please remember, when you're taking these photographs, move slowly and always focus on the head. With snakes, it's really easy to get the body out of focus. This is a corn snake. He's actually a pet that I keep, and I feed him mice that have been killed and frozen. I warm them up. Don't feed frozen mice to your snake. It's a bad idea. And they're pretty easy to care for. This is a common garter snake I caught while kayaking in the Broken Islands on the west coast of British Columbia. There's quite a few different kinds of garter snakes. This is a common garter snake. And I want you to take a look at the head and specifically at the eyes. You'll see how they're opaque. This guy's getting ready to shed. This is a Puget Sound garter snake. And if you follow the head back, you'll see at the top of the frame there's an enlargement. He's got something tasty in there. This is a northwestern garter snake I caught not too far from my home. If you follow the snake back, you'll find near the end of the image there's a chunk taken out of his tail. And so this is one of the reasons I like people to have their dogs on a leash. This is a rubber boa. I've actually caught 2 of them in my time. They're not very easy to find, and they are protected, but they are a remarkable species. They're only a couple of feet long, 2 feet at the most. They have some really wild behaviors. This is a gopher snake, and they tend to be active during the day, diurnal, and when it gets hot out, they tend to be crepuscular, only active at dawn and dusk. This is another gopher snake that I saw on the Sunshine Coast, and It was exciting. Gopher snakes are remarkably aquatic. A lot of snakes are aquatic. There's a lot of garter snakes that are quite fond of taking fish. They have backward pointing teeth that make it very easy to grab onto a fish. Garter snakes are very fond of nesting and overwintering in burrowed areas that we call hibernaculum. And although they don't produce body heat, they do produce a little bit because there is respiration and stuff going on. And they tend to feed together. This is a thing on lizards here. Some of these were photographed in captivity. Blue-tongued skink. Australian water dragon was actually wild, and it was really exciting to get a photograph of him. This is in the Caribbean. This is a spotted anole, and this is one of my favorite photographs. Photographing them from the side, if you can, is the best idea because then you don't lose depth of field focus. This is a gold dust gecko found on the Big Island of Hawaii. Very pretty. Sagebrush lizard. It was actually one of my first lizards ever to be caught. This was my first lizard, and it was really exciting for me. I grew up in Ontario and Alberta, where lizards are pretty rare, if not absent altogether. So I didn't really find my first one until I was quite a bit older. So this is Clark's spiny lizard. I photographed this at Joshua Tree National Park. If you got a chance to go there, it is awesome. But it's hot, so do yourself a favor and go early. And there's some remarkable opportunities for photographing lizards. This is a western whiptail that I photographed in Washington. It was quite funny because I looked it up in my field guides, and I caught it in a place where it said it shouldn't be, but it was. Curly-tailed lizard. These guys are native to the Bahamas, but I photographed him in Florida, and it seems to be the way it goes, that there are a lot of invasive and unwelcome visitors in many parts of the world. Western fence lizard. Get a kick at the throat and the underbelly of him. This is a side-blotched lizard. I got a couple of photographs of these guys that I took. You can see the dewlap. That's the little part underneath by the chin there. And this is another photograph of one. This one here, it's not a great photo, but I included it because it shows the ear really well. Snakes don't have ears. Their ears are internal. Lizards do have ears, and their hearing is quite good. Northern alligator lizard. We don't find a lot of lizards in Canada, but the northern alligator is one that is present in BC, certainly. And I've caught a few of them up here. And one of the things I like to do whenever I'm out and about is to provide the opportunity for others to learn from whatever I find. Mostly because people don't know that things are there, and it's important for them to understand the value of ecology and maintaining wild spaces. Chameleon photographed from a zoo. These are juvenile bearded dragons. If you want to get used to photographing lizards and whatnot, a good idea is to go to a pet store and get permission to take some photos of the creatures that you see there. There's some pretty good opportunities. This is a crested gecko. This is another great idea. Going to a pet exhibit. So sometimes they have these exhibitions where everyone kind of gets together and you can shop around. It's a really marvelous opportunity to get close to some of these animals. This is a spiny-tailed iguana, native to Mexico, and you can see the top picture there. He's eating hibiscus, vegetarian sorts, but really dangerous claws and pretty vicious tail. This is a green anole that I caught at my brother's place in Texas. They're all over the place. It's not uncommon to lift up a board or something that you got sitting on the property and there's a couple of lizards under there. This is a lizard I photographed in Florida. Not sure what the species is. I got other groups of reptiles I want to talk about. This is a tuatara. Now I know it looks like a lizard, but it's not a lizard. It's a more primitive form. There's 5 different groups of lizards, and the tuatara is a separate one. They're only found in New Zealand, and unfortunately, because of a lot of the invasive species between the rats and the ermine and so many other organisms, cats, that they are killing these things off. And so you only find tuataras now off on some of these very distant, remote islands. American alligator. Alligators are quite neat because they have a 4-chambered heart, unlike the rest of the reptiles. They're much more efficient in the way that they exchange oxygen and the way that they move blood around in their bodies. This is a western painted turtle, and these guys are a little bit endangered. You might find from time to time either places like this where it says, do not disturb. Take that seriously. And even if it isn't posted and you have a natural wetland, you can bet that there are turtles there, and do not disturb, because their eggs get wiped out. This is one of the things that causes grief. This is a red-eared slider. These guys are very invasive. They're very common as pets. When people are done with them, they get rid of them, put them into the local body of water thinking, I'll just let them go and it's great. But unfortunately, they outcompete the neighboring ones. This is a turtle we found laying eggs. That was quite an exciting moment. I can truly say I've only ever done that once. This is a Amazonian turtle. I love this photograph with the way the water ripples. This is a gopher tortoise that I photographed at a zoo. And this is a Sonoran desert tortoise. I actually photographed this in the wild. And that was really exciting to be able to do that. This is a common snapping turtle I found down in southern Texas. And actually, as I was walking along, I didn't even see him. He was partly buried in the sand. I tripped over him, and it was a really exciting find. Green sea turtle. These guys are protected. The biggest one I ever caught was 900 pounds, which is huge. They're usually between 200 and 400 pounds. They are considered threatened. This is on amphibians and salamanders. Long-toed salamander. These guys are one of the mole salamander species that belongs to the northwestern, and the tiger salamanders all belong to that same group. They're very fossorial. They dig into burrows and overwinter there. This is a redback salamander. It's a kind of woodland salamander. The difference is that these guys don't need water to breed in. They lay their eggs in rotting wood, and the young are born just little copies of the parents. Quite exciting. If you ever catch any of these things, keep your hands damp and move slowly, and put them back when you find them. I always find these guys by moving logs and stuff and seeing what's underneath. Sometimes, though, they just come right up and introduce themselves. I was hiking on Vancouver Island, and I turned around, and right behind me there was a spotted, or a rough-skinned newt. And these guys are Canada's most poisonous amphibian. Those little bumps on the skin, each one of those bumps is loaded with a very dangerous venom. It's actually the same poison that the pufferfish uses. And this is an axolotl, which I photographed in captivity. Never actually seen a wild one. Just take a minute on frogs and toads here. And I'm always interested in frogs and toads. These are some of the species we have around us, ones that I've caught and found locally. Bullfrogs are invasive. They are really very nasty in that they eat everything that's smaller than them, and not by much. And they will wipe out an ecosystem in no time. This is my son, and he discovered a thousands and thousands of western spadefoot toads that were maturing and coming out. This is a western toad. I find these guys fairly frequently. This is a cane toad, and I have to say Australians know all about this fellow. They are causing just massive carnage. Not only do they eat everything that they see, but on top of that, they are extremely poisonous, and if they get taken by another animal, it's not unusual for that animal to die. Golden dart frog, Amazonian poison dart frog, And this is one I photographed in a zoo. Thanks so much for looking at this and following my website. Please feel free to send me an email. Thanks for watching.